Welcome everyone to our free IME's free GAMSAT webinar 2 of the series. So we are running these webinars monthly. Our last webinar was a success. I have sent you all, to those who've attended the last webinar, so webinar 1, a link so you can watch it either directly on YouTube, or if you go on our website at imemedical.com, you can find it there in our webinar list. It's been a very big month since we last gave our webinar. So in September, there's been the GAMSAT that's gone past. I spoke to a couple of you off air. It looks like the GAMSAT this year was, or in this September, was just like every other GAMSAT. It's, you go in prepared and you come out questioning your existence pretty much, like what the hell just happened. That is the GAMSAT. So don't feel as though you did poorly or everybody else did better than you. That's just the GAMSAT. The whole point of the GAMSAT is it's supposed to be, it's a battle of attrition. It's supposed to be time pressured. It's supposed to be tough. If it was easy, everybody would do well. So don't worry, that's how it is. And I guess the best advice I can give those who haven't sat the GAMSAT is the best preparation for the GAMSAT is to sit the GAMSAT. And then the next best is to come and attend these free sessions or these sorts of group study sessions where we're actively learning certain GAMSAT questions and we're putting into practice our knowledge. So there are also interviews for those who are lucky enough to receive an interview for 2023 entry. I think the interviews will finish up either end of this week or next week. Good luck to those who are currently at the last stage, so the interviews. If you do need support at the Institute of Medical Education, we can help you. And for those who are new tagging along, my name's Hassan. So I'm the lecturer here at the Institute of Medical Education. I do have a background in cancer biology. I did a PhD medicine, and I've taught at the University of Sydney, I think for 4 or 5 years across multiple faculties in science and medicine and health. So at the Institute of Medical Education, a lot of our educators are university trained academics. So that's pretty much why I guess it sets us apart from the rest. So before we dive into the questions today, and sorry, the sun's on my face, I had to pull the blinds down. Please follow us on social media. So the Institute of Medical Education, we were originally METC Institute, but we've recently rebranded post-COVID because obviously times have changed, teaching has changed, and it's kind of, IME represents the new brand, new style of teaching in a post-COVID environment. So to complement that, you can find lots of free material on our website at imemedical.com. We have a free exam, free interview generator, free section 2 generator with solutions, with actually responses to stimuli. You can also look up Institute of Medical Education on either Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube. We've got videos for solutions for ASA, practice booklets. We've got other solutions for our own questions, and it's, I guess, a treasure trove of free material for your GAMSAT or interview, or I guess UCAT if you're going down that pathway. We also are active on Instagram and TikTok. I'm having lots of fun creating all these TikToks for you. So please follow us on Instagram at @pre-IME_IME and TikTok at IMEmedical. So we've given you a whole bunch of free material. And I guess the whole reason why we've started these sessions, these free sessions, is because we know, especially now during these times, it's tough, you know, inflation, economics, everything is just very, cost of living is high. And we do obviously sell products and programs. We do offer, you can enroll if you want on our website, but that's not why we're giving this talk today. I'm not going to do a marketing and sales and push you to buy our products. The reason why we have these free sessions is for those who just can't afford it, or for those who are just unsure on whether or not they're interested in the GAMSAT. And if you are interested, you can contact us. I mean, I'll leave my details at the end of this talk. We can talk about any programs or courses that would be best suited for you. Otherwise, you can just use our free material if you wish. We are here in the Gold Coast in Benoa. So that's, if anybody is familiar with Surfers Paradise. We're about a 5-minute drive from Surfers Paradise in the Gold Coast. So it's a fantastic sunny place, got the sun on me now. So if you do want to have a chat with us, with the team, you can come by, let us know, and we'd love to, I guess, accommodate you in this respect. So today's session, usually the way we're going to structure these sessions, which I've structured the first one, is we're going to just, I guess, discuss a section one, a common section one theme or a question that might come up in section one, or a common topic. Today, we're going to look at poems, because poems come up very, very often in the GAMSAT. I've decided to pick a poem that's easy to read, because in the GAMSAT, for those who have sat it, you can vouch for this and say, yes, that sometimes they might just chuck a poem from the 1600s, and you're just like, what the hell is going on? And you have to understand the context. Today, we're not going to do that. We're just going to go through a standard poem, just so we can extract the important information. Then after that, we're going to review, take a look at some multi and ternary graphs, and just point you in the right direction on how to answer questions in these types of formats. Again, the idea isn't to give you something that's going to throw you off or to make us sound so smart. The whole idea is just to give you something that shows you what to expect in the GAMSAT, and maybe for the next GAMSAT, you've got a tip or a trick to be able to answer a similar question. And then finally, we can address any questions you have. But if you do have any questions throughout the talk, please just post them on the Q&A board. You can put your hand up. I think there should be a hand up feature here on the webinar, Zoom webinar feed, I guess, platform. And I will attend to that, I guess, immediately if it's important. If it's not, we can leave it until the end. So the structure of these webinars, like last time, is we'll show you a couple of questions and then give you a couple of minutes to answer them. And then we come back, see what your answers are like, and then decide on, and just, I guess, go through how we can approach these questions. So the first question, so we're going to look through the first stimuli, I guess, is a poem analysis. So I've decided to put forward, I just found, I mean, this is one of the most famous poems when it comes to World War I poems. So it's written by a soldier called John McCrae. So it's a World War poem written by a Canadian soldier. And he is also a physician. His name is John McCrae. And it's set in a northern region of Belgium when numerous conflicts took place. So there are 3 questions, but before I give you time to go off and answer these questions, I think it's best I just read the poem to you first. And then we can move forward. And just note, for those who haven't set the GAMSAT before, as of 2022, section 1, I think you should give yourself, there's 62 questions in section 1, in 100 minutes or something like that. So you should give yourself about 1.5 minutes per question. But because we've got 3 questions today, that's about 4.5 minutes. And I'll give you some time to read the poem. I'll give you guys a total of 5 minutes to answer these 3 questions, and then we can go through your answers. But let me just read the poem first. And once I read the poem, I can start the 5 minutes. So the poem, In Flanders Fields. In Flanders Fields, the poppies blow. Between the crosses, row on row, that mark our place, and in the sky, the larks, still bravely singing, fly, scarce heard amid the guns below. We are the dead, short days ago. We lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders Fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe. To you from failing hands we throw. The torch, be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders Fields. So I'll give you 5 minutes to have a go at these 3 questions. What I'll do is I'll start the poll, and please answer the poll. The poll is anonymous, so I won't know who's answered anything, so don't worry about that. So I'm going to start the poll now. You have 5 minutes starting now. So you have 2 more minutes. Think about your answers. And if you want to change your options or not change it, I'm not playing devil's advocate here, but if you do want to change your options, think about it. Okay, so we have 30 seconds. Try to put in your answers if you haven't yet in the next 15 seconds. Okay, great. So there's about 5 more seconds, but I think we've got all your answers in there. So I'll just end that poll. Okay, interesting. So it looks like you all have different answers. So what I'm going to do then is open the floor and first just ask, what do you think what is this poem about? So what is this poem about? So you can chime in. I think I've given you the option to have a chat if you'd like, or put your hand up, or just let me know, what do you think this poem is about?
The first impression it gave to me is like it's talking about a war.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I'm right, but that's how I felt.
Yeah. It definitely, yeah. Well, it's written about Flanders Fields. So Flanders Fields is an area, I think it's in Belgium, yep, region in Belgium when they were having a war. So it's about the war, yes. So what could you say specifically about the war? What's it trying to say? What did you get from it? Do you have an idea? Or is just like, oh, it was too rushed? What do you think?
I can't make up much about this poem. I think it's a bit too rushed for me because I haven't gone to practicing poem just yet.
That's fine. No, that's perfectly fine. With the GAMSAT, that's what happens. So you're rushed with time. That even if I gave you like 10 minutes to read this, you'd get it straight away. But with GAMSAT, it's the beast. That's the beast of GAMSAT. A lot of people don't prepare for is answering questions under pressure, which is what these webinars will help you to do, hopefully, eventually in the future. What about you, Ramsha? Thanks for that, Troy, as well. And by the way, there are no wrong answers. That's the whole point of these webinars, is that we have some discussion, active discussion on topics, and we can feed answers off each other. How about you, Ramsha? How do you see this poem?
From what's written on the top, that it's coming from a soldier. And from reading at the last paragraph, I can see that the soldier is saying the torch be used to hold it high, and if you break the faith. So I'm thinking that it's towards like a politician or a government, and it's telling them to maybe like have a faith in us, and though all these flowers grow around us, but we are here fighting in the battlefield and we are dying. I don't know, I could be wrong, but yeah, that's how I kind of see the poem after reading.
Yeah, so you've got the gist of it. So it's a poem about it's a tragedy of soldiers' deaths, and I guess it's juxtaposed with the natural beauty of Flanders Fields. So they're talking about death, they're talking about Flanders Fields, they're talking about their graves, and I guess there's a line here somewhere about their graves and poppies lying, growing around their graves. So it's also, it kind of addresses, I don't want to go through the answer because it's going to answer one other question, but it kind of addressing handing over the torch to this other group to continue the battle. Who that is, we'll find out when we cross through the questions. But they're trying to say that it's their responsibility to carry on the battle because they're dead now. So that's the idea. The idea is that these soldiers are dead. They died in a beautiful place. They can't do anything about it. So they're passing on the torch to whoever it is, which we'll go through in a second. And they want them to continue the battle. And if they don't continue the battle, then it says here, they shall not sleep. So they're not going to be happy in death unless you continue their battle. So that's the whole idea. So if we take a look at the first question, it asks, the second stanza of the poem is written in. So the second stanza is over here. I'll just get my pointer out. So here's the second stanza. So that's the first, second, third stanza. So when it says we, okay, so is that going to be first, second, third, or fourth person? Because I noticed that you guys had different answers to each other. So why would you say it's either first, second, third, or fourth person?
I thought I is first person, so we is basically equals to I. So I think it's first person.
So we've got Troy, first person, we, and I. And how about you, Ramsha? What do you think?
I went for a fourth person.
Ooh.
I was confused between the first and fourth.
That's interesting. So what I'm going to do is first, let me just turn on the lights. It's getting very dark here. I'll just turn on the lights 1 second, just so you can see me. Let's see if you can see me now. There we go. Magic. So the answer is first person. So I'll explain. So Troy was correct in saying that first person is I, we, ours, us. That's first person perspective. So second person perspective is, do you guys know what second person is?
You.
Yep, you. So that second person is you. So this is I, we, you. Third person, do you guys know what third person perspective is?
He, she, they, them.
Yep, so he, she, etc. And fourth person, so the reason why fourth person I chucked in there, it's a relatively new one. So fourth person is something that not many people are aware of because it's been used in literature very recently. So keep that in mind next time you see the GAMSAT, because they might chuck a fourth person span in the works. But does anybody know what fourth person is?
Never heard of it.
Yeah, so it's a new one. So fourth person is, it's something like one or somebody or someone. So I'll give you an example in a sentence. I wrote one down just earlier. Anyone, so it's like anyone. So it's something like anyone could hurt themselves playing football. So it's kind of in fourth person. It's saying anyone rather than I can hurt myself playing football. You can hurt yourself playing football. He can hurt himself playing football. Anyone can hurt themselves playing football. So that's probably a good way to remember the differences between the four. I guess that's probably the best way. That's probably the easiest way. So it's fourth person is one, someone, anyone. So just keep that in mind if you're reading literature. And the reason why I chucked this question in here is because when you're reading anything for preparation for the GAMSAT, try to actively read the poems. Try to understand if it's written in first person, second person, etc. Also, these poetic devices, and try to understand what the poem is trying to tell you. Because if you do this actively for each poem you read, when you sit the GAMSAT, it's going to be so much easier. So it leads it, I guess, easier to approach the poem. So with question 2, it says here the recurrence of Flanders fields in lines 1, 9, and 15 is an example of which poetic device. So again, we had 2 different responses. One of them was correct. So can somebody tell me what an assonance is?
I don't know how to explain in English, sorry.
No, that's fine. That's fine. So there's a difference between assonance and consonants. So, well, I guess assonance is a repetition of the same vowel in a vowel line in poetry, and consonant is repetition of a consonant. So Flanders fields, is there repetition of the same vowel in here? Not really. So when you look at, for example, I wrote one down earlier as well. Example of assonance would be green beans are teeming with health benefits. Can you see how green, bean, teem? So it's recurrence of that vowel sound. So that's what assonance is. However, Flanders fields is not recurrence of the same vowel sound. So personification. So do you guys know what personification is?
Like personify a object.
Yeah, so it's like a figure of speech. So it's kind of like saying the leaves danced in the wind. So you're giving personable qualities to an inanimate object. So the leaves dance in the wind. So that's personification. Whereas here we've got Flanders fields. So Flanders fields here, that's not a personification because it's just telling you the location of the battlefield. So that's Flanders fields. So it's not going to be assonance, it's not going to be personification. Allusion. So do you guys know what allusion is?
No.
So an allusion is, it's an indirect reference to someone. So if I tell you something like, I met a man who was romantic like Romeo, it's alluding to Romeo and Juliet, the play by Shakespeare. So that's an allusion. So is Flanders fields alluding to anything, or is it just describing to you a location?
Just a location.
Yeah, just a location. So you can rule that out. So that's why we can say that alliteration is the answer. But just before I begin, hi, Jeremy. Thanks for joining. I'll give you a chance to have a chat. I'll let you talk. But we're just going through these first couple of answers. Don't worry, you haven't missed out on much. We still have to go through the final answer and a section 3. So if you're there, Jeremy, just you can watch this for a bit whilst we go through the answer, and then we can go through the section 3 in a second. So the reason why it's alliteration is because, well, alliteration is the repetition of consonants. So the repetition in this instance is of the initial F. That's the best way to describe it. So we're going Flanders fields. So that's why it's alliteration, is because the repetition of the F. So it's a bit niche, and the reason why I chucked this in there, again, in GAMSAT, they love asking questions like this. I mean, I'm not saying they do this all the time, but they love asking questions like this because they want to know if you have a grasp of poetic devices. So if you didn't understand any of these terms, what I would do is go back, draft your own database of poetic device terms, give a definition and an explanation of each one next to it. So I had a comment here that what was personification? Sorry, I missed that. So personification, it's a figure of speech. It's kind of like giving inanimate objects human characteristics. It's something like the leaves danced in the wind. So it's a personification. So that's an idea or an example of personification. You're giving inanimate objects human qualities. It's kind of like inanimate objects or abstract images. So it doesn't have to necessarily be an object. So if you did have trouble with these terms, again, just have your own database. That's the best way to prepare, with a whole bunch of like 30, 40 different poetic device terms, and put them in there. And then when you start actively reading poems, you can start looking for assonance, personification, allusion, alliteration, metaphor, simile, onomatopoeia, oxymorons, chiasmus, all these sorts of terms. You can look for them because in the GAMSAT, what separates you from the pack is the 1%ers. And doing these 1%ers is going to help you score well in section 1. Because section 1 is notoriously difficult to improve in. But these are the sorts of things we can do to improve your score. Now, finally, question 3, when the speaker asks in line 10, to take up our quarrel with the foe, they are mainly referring to A, the enemy, general public, politicians, or allied soldiers. Now, we had a couple of different responses here. Can you guys just speak to me, tell me why you either decided on your response, why you chose that response? I'll give you a couple of seconds. I know it's like, why did I choose it? Why did I choose it? Well, if we think about it, when it says here, so what is discussing here the soldiers? They're telling you, obviously, they're describing the beautiful scenery, but they've got their graves, they're dead, but with their graves, they have these nice poppies growing next to their graves. So it's kind of this symbol of remembrance and this symbol of rebirth. And in this instance, it's this idea that the soldiers don't want to die for nothing. They want the general public to take up arms and to fight their quarrel because they're parching it. So the soldiers aren't politicians or soldiers, or sorry, these dead soldiers aren't politicians. So these dead soldiers are actual regular people. You can see here that John McCrae himself, he actually passed away only a couple of years after he wrote this poem, I think in 1919, I can't remember when it was. I don't know if it was during World War II, but World War I, sorry. He did pass away as a soldier. You can see he used to be a physician, but he's a soldier. So they're saying to the general public, take on the torch, be yours to hold it high. So please take it. Don't do us an injustice. Fight with us, because if you don't, we're not going to sleep. And even though these poppies grow in Flanders fields, even though it looks like a beautiful scenery, it's an amazing place, we're not going to sleep happily, even though we're dead in an amazing place. We're not going to, because you guys haven't taken up arms. Now, to answer this question, it's all about context here. And this is why I included this sort of question, because when it comes to GAMSAT, context is important, especially for section 1. This poem was written in 1915. So in 1915, it was at the beginning of World War I. A lot of poems, if you read from this time period, were very accepting of the war. They romanticized the war, and they wanted to promote as many people to join the war, take up arms. The reason why the answer isn't the enemy, for those, if you did choose the enemy, is because the enemy, why would they write about the enemy saying, please avenge our death for the enemy? That doesn't make sense. The reason why the answer isn't politicians is because they're talking about regular people. They're talking about their friends, their comrades. Please join our fight. Again, it was written in 1915. It was written in a time period when conscription was high. They wanted more people to join the war. So you could argue it would be politicians if this was written, I'd say, let's say 1918, towards the end of the war, when a lot of the poems were not nice towards the war. They were very critical of the war. But at the beginning, it's more so for the soldiers. Allied soldiers, not so much, because the Allied soldiers are the dead. That's the idea. That's why it's not Allied soldiers. So it's the general public, because they're trying to say, please avenge our deaths. If you don't take up our fight, we're not going to sleep well. We're not going to die happy. And finally, just before we move on from this poem onto a section 3 question, this, you might ask, is this poem the reason why poppies are used as a symbol for Remembrance Day, Anzac Day, all these sorts of World War I remembrance? This poem isn't the main reason, but it's one of the reasons why we do use a poppy. I think the biggest reason why we use poppies was, I think, in the 19th century with the wars with Napoleon. They had a lot of their wars in Belgium and that part of the world, and the poppy became a symbol of war and a symbol of, I guess, peace and war and love and all that sort of stuff. So this is one of those poems. It's one of the most famous poems for World War I. This poem by John McCrae, and it kind of does etch into history, pushing, the poppy as being used for World War I remembrance. So do you guys have any questions on this poem or anything about section 1 before we move on to our section 3 question? Or are you guys content? Okay, cool. So if you do have any more questions, you can, let me just erase all this. If you do have any more questions, you can post them in a Q&A box, or if you're watching this online, you can post in the comment section and we'll reply to you as promptly as we can. So section 3, I'm sure you can now dive in, Jeremy, and what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at a couple multi-internary graphs. At first instance, they might look complex, but we'll see how you go in answering them. But then when we work together to answer after you answer them, you'll notice that, oh, that was okay. So what we're going to start off with is, my mouse out here. We're going to start off here with just a graph, a regular looking graph. But it's going to be split into 2 sections. It's going to be 4 questions, but I'll split it into 2 sections. So me personally, I love jewelry. I love gold. I love the sparkle. So I decided, you know what, let's create a question that's going to teach you something. Because a lot of times, people create questions where you don't learn anything from it at school and at university. You're like, why did they teach us this? At least today, after this question, after this stimuli, you're going to know why jewelry are different types of color and how we can determine the different types of color for different jewelries, and why we use jewelry in medicine, and why we can also use it for in dentistry, I guess. So it says here in the stimuli, gold is malleable and highly durable, which is why it's used extensively in tooth repair for inlays such as crowns and bridges. However, compared with most alloys, pure gold, they're fragile, and it has to be combined with other metals. Generally, it's combined with copper, because copper, I mean, that's, I'm not going to go through why, because it's one of the questions, but it's generally combined with copper to increase durability. So the strengthening of dental gold alloys can involve diverse heat treatment. So we've got A and B. So A is the dotted and B is the dark line, shown in figure 1. So you can see here, figure 1 shows you the hardness of silver, gold, copper alloys. So it's percentage mass composition for heat treatments A and B. Please note as well that hardness refers to the alloy's ability to withstand localized force without deformation. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the next stimuli as well, just to give you an idea of what to expect. So this first stimuli is discussing the durability of the gold alloy, whereas the next stimuli for questions 3 and 4 is actually discussing the color of the alloys. So the addition of silver to gold and copper alloys, they provide the benefit of durability, but also it allows certain variation in color of the alloy to offset the red copper effect. So that's why, when people say, what's white gold, what's rose gold, what's this kind of color of silver, X, Y, Z, this ternary graph is Y. So those combinations in various proportions produce white, yellow, green, and red golds, and is represented as a ternary system as shown here. So you can see here, it's a ternary plot of silver, gold, copper system with corresponding conventional colors of various alloy compositions. Just note the apex here is a red-yellow color, and that green-yellow and red-yellow, they're considered one color profiles. So what I'll do is I'll give you about, before we dive into the questions, I'll give you, let's say 30 seconds just to read this again, but you don't need this. And then I'll give you, so 2 minutes. So in the GAMSAT, your section 3 is 75 questions to complete in 150 minutes. So it's 2 minutes per question. So I'll give you 2, 4, 6, 8 minutes. So I'll give you 4 minutes here, 2 minutes here, and 2 minutes here. But in the interim, I'll give you 30 seconds before I move over to the next one. So I'll give you 30 seconds to look at this again, and then I'll move on to the next one. But don't worry, you're not going to be impacted because you really just need the graph, not necessarily the stimuli. But in the GAMSAT, you'd have to read everything. But because of today, it's better if you just read the graphs. It's fine. So what I'll do is I'll give you, okay, I'll just start the poll. For the, actually, let's go through, we'll go through the first two and then we'll go through the answer, then we'll go for the last two. How about we do that? So I'll give you 4.5 minutes. So I'll start off 30 seconds here, and then I'll give you 2 minutes each question. So your time starts now. Sorry, we'll go through all 4 questions, don't worry. So I'll give you, 4 minutes for this, and then we'll go through the other 2. So we have 2 more minutes just to answer the number 2. 2 more minutes to answer these questions. We have 30 seconds left. Please be sure to put your responses in. Again, it's anonymous, so I don't know who's answered what. It's nice. We've got some variation in answers. I like it when we've got variation. Conflict is always good because conflict means it's going to generate some discussion. 10 more seconds. Come on. One more person, I think, has to vote. Please put your votes in now. Time's up. Please put in your votes. If you don't put in your votes in another 10 seconds, I'm just going to stop the poll. Come on, come on. Put anything. All right, 5 more seconds. If you don't put anything, I'm just going to stop it. And okay, I'll just end the poll then. Now, okay, cool. So we've got a variation in answers for the first, and it looks like we've narrowed it down. So to, where's the pen? These two, and it looks like everybody has answered this one for D. So let's look at question 1. Can anybody tell me what this means? What does a 3:2 ratio mean? Yep, Jeremy. I think yep, you can have a chat. Yep,
I assume, I don't know if it's a bit too noisy, I can just put it in the chat.
You're fine, you're fine.
But 3:2, I assume, is like 3 lots of gold to 2 lots of the alloys. And then I assume that means it's the same, like instead of odds, if you do percentage, it's 3 divided by 5, like 3, you know, plus 2.
Mm-hmm.
So 3 over 5. So it's like 60%, I think. So if 24 carats, 100%, then it's 60% of 24.
Yep.
So I think, like, just because of the time constraints, I just thought it was 14k carat, but I don't know if the maths were correct on that one.
No, that's fantastic. So it looks like you've got the gist of it, and that's correct. So that's the correct reasoning here. So the reason why and 14 carat is correct. So the reason why I included this question is because I've noticed in the past, from years and years of teaching students, even, you know what, when I was doing my research, a lot of researchers, PhDs, don't even know how to work ratios. So it's not just students. A lot of very smart people don't know how to work ratios. So when it says 3:2, you're 100% correct. So 3:2 means there's 5 parts. That was me recently, Jeremy. Yeah, sometimes some people get it at the beginning of their say science career. Sometimes people just never get it. It's fantastic that you've got it, and hopefully all of you have it as well. So when it comes to 3:2 ratio, it means there's 5 parts. And if you look at it that way, you say, okay, 5 parts means that 5 parts equals 100%. That means what's 1 part of 100%? That's 20%. So each part is going to be 20%. So if you've got 3:2, that's going to be 3 times 20% to 2 times 20%. And the reason why we say this is because if you were to say 6 parts to 4, it's the same principle. So it's 10 parts overall. And that means there's 6 of the 10. So 6 divided by 10 is 60%. 4 divided by 10 is 40%. And it's the same principle if I chuck in 23 out of, let's say, 23 parts, 46, 23 parts, 23. So if it's 23 parts 23, that's 1-to-1, obviously. So it's 50% each. But you get the point. So when it comes to ratios, don't get confused. 1-to-1 means 50%. So there's 50% equal combination of, let's say, A to B. When people see 2-to-1, they mistakenly think that it's 50%. It's not. 2 to 1 is 3 parts, which means this is going to be 66% to 33%, because this is twice this. So A is double B, which means A, so 66% is double 33%. Now, the reason why I included this is because, again, a lot of students find that difficult. So I always remember 1 to 1 is 50% each, 2 to 1 is double A to B. So we've got a comment here from Jeremy. Yes, epidemiology course would definitely help you with the ratios, but also adds the A to B means A plus B. So we've got, I'll probably just clean it up now, erase pen. So what Jeremy is saying is that A to B is the same as A plus B equals 100%. So in this instance, we've got A to B. So then that means that's going to be 3 to 2 is the same as 3 plus 2 equals 100%, which is correct. So 5 is equal to 100%. And therefore, 1 part is 20%. So, but when we look here at pure gold, the measurement is 24 carat, is 100%. And you didn't have to do ratios here. You could have just intuitively said, okay, so therefore 12K is 50%. If 12K is 50%, we know that if it's 3 to 2 ratio gold to alloy, we know that gold 3 to 2 has to be greater than alloy. And if we know that 12K is 50%, it can't be 9 and 10 because it has to be something greater than 9 and 10. Therefore, it's either going to be 14 or 18K, but we know that 18K, so 18K is of 24K is the same as, well, 18 over 24 is 3 over 4, which is 75%. So we know that 18K is 75%, and we know that 14K is about 60%. So the answer we're looking for, if this was 75%, it would be 3 to 1. So that would be 75 parts to 25 out of 100. So it's not 3 to 1, it's a 3 to 2. That's why it's not 18K and it's 14K. And just quickly, a very easy way to work with percentages in the GAMSAT so you don't get confused for future GAMSATs. I've written it down here. Take note that 60% of 24, so let's say 24 carat, is the same as saying 24% of 60. So 24% of 60 is just a quarter. So a quarter of 60, we know, therefore, is going to equal about 15. Whereas 60% of 24, some people might be like, oh, what's this? But if you just flip it, it's easier. So you know the answer is going to be around 15 carat. So it's this answer here. So that's something to think about in the future. Now, when it comes to the next question, you all correctly said D. Can anyone explain to me why they answered D? Assuming relative proportions, copper in an 18 carat trimetal gold alloy with silver is harder than silver. Can someone please tell me why they chose D?
So,
yes.
I don't know. Sorry, I forgot to lower my hand. Like as per the last question, I thought, okay, 18 divided by 24 gives us the 75% gold. And then I thought, okay, the more copper, well, basically we had a bit of a plateau there. So, you know, as long as it's over 20%, but I guess the premise is the more copper, the stronger it is. So it says copper, like is, well, it'd be, I assume it would be harder than silver because on the graph it said more copper, the more the hardness is higher. But I got confused because I went, well, where is the silver in this? You know, I've got gold, I've got copper, it says trimetal. So I get that it says relative proportions. Copper, so I assume it would be copper and silver would make up the rest equally. But it just said copper with silver is harder than silver. So yeah, I just assume, look, copper is harder than silver, maybe. Well, the more copper, the better. I just made the assumption that, okay, because the more copper, the harder, well, the greater the hardness. I assume that just, you know, copper is harder than pure silver.
Okay, that's a very good assumption because you got the correct answer. How about, before I dive into my rationale, how about other attendees? How are you guys going, Ramsha and Troy? What do you think? Give you a couple. Yeah, Ramsha. Troy.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I have absolutely no idea how to.
That's all right.
do this. Yeah.
That's perfectly fine. So hopefully after I give the explanation, or if Ramsha has an explanation as well, and I guess Jeremy's explanation helps as well, we can, using the graph, explain why D is the answer. Do you have anything, Ramsha, or should I just move on to the answer?
I just realized another point.
Yeah, sure.
What if I hadn't happened to
It's just like,
covenantal break
well,
and have a
as I can, again, I can see, okay,
just got in suspended.
oh no, I've gone off on a tangent. I think I've
That's fine.
I think I've digressed here. So I looked at how too much copper and the hardness goes down. So that's why it's, well, it's good that we've got a high percentage of gold and around 20%. I mean, that would be good. But then, oh, actually,
It's the opposite, isn't it?
Because now I'm going, okay, if 75% gold, 18 karat, if you've got 25% left, which means if it's a trimetal with relative proportion, oh no, I read it as equal proportions, so that would mean half of 25, so it'd be 12, which is still very low on the hardness, so you need more copper than silver. And then in that way, because you need more copper than silver to reach the 20% or more, I assume then it's harder than silver, because otherwise you would have silver taking up most of the 25% remainder. And then on this, that would mean because there's less than the 20% copper, it would be quite low.
So you've got there, Jeremy. So you're on the right path. So you've got it. So let's just quickly look at this figure first before we dive into it. What it's showing is percentage gold up here. I've written on the side, so 75% gold is 18 karat, 60% is 14 karat, 40% is 10 karat. And on the bottom, we've got copper percentages. And whatever's left over is silver. So that was kind of the trick in the graph here, because it is a, I guess, a trimetal alloy. So you've got silver, gold, copper, but it gives you a percentage gold and copper. It doesn't have to tell you the percentage silver, because it's assumed whatever's left over is going to be silver. So keep that in mind. So we've got two different heat treatments, A and B. In this instance, it's not necessarily asking on the heat treatment, it's just asking you in an 18K, so we know if we did our maths, 18K is 75%. We look here at this graph. Copper in a gold alloy with silver, is it going to be hard, soft? Well, I'll give you the answer is, well, copper is harder than silver and gold, just slightly. The reason why I wrote in this way the question was because technically speaking, copper and gold and silver have, relatively speaking, I mean, their hardnesses are pretty similar, but copper just edges them out. But you can see here clearly in this image that, let's say we've got 75% gold. So let's say 75% gold. We've got about, let's say 20% copper. And let's say the rest is going to be silver. So 5% is going to be silver. You can see the hardness is 300. However, if we drop down here, so let's drop down here and have, let's say, 1% copper. So 1%, so let's say it's still 75% gold. Let's say we've got 1% copper, which means the rest is going to be 24% silver. Can you see how the hardness is somewhere below 100? Oh, sorry. So the hardness is below 100 Newton millimeters squared. So yeah, just to answer that question, Ramsha, yes, you will get the recording in the email. So don't worry about that. So if you did miss anything, it is recorded. So you will have access to the recording. I'll send you a link once it's up on our website or YouTube, and you'll get the link, so don't worry. So you can see clearly that when this drops, when you add more silver, hardness drops with more silver. When you add more copper, hardness increases. So you can see here that in the alloy, silver is reducing hardness, whereas copper is increasing hardness. So relatively speaking, therefore, copper, you could argue, is harder than silver because it's increasing the hardness of the alloy. I mean, I had to write the question a bit specifically because you might argue, well, how do you know if you just add something it makes it harder, X, Y, Z? But principally speaking, let's look at it this way. You add something, it makes it not hard. You add something that makes it very hard, we can assume that that's harder than the other thing. So in this instance, we've done the same thing. So that's why D is correct here. So I try to word it in a way that doesn't get into very semantics. But the idea is you can see clearly from the graph, you add copper, increases hardness. You add silver, decreases hardness. So that's the point. So if you're keeping gold at a relative stable point, so that's why D is the answer. So if we just quickly now, the last two questions, what I'll do is I'll give you, sorry. So we don't necessarily need to read this because it's just information about the ternary graph. This is all you need to know. And the important information is here. So this is just some extra information. In the GAMSAT, if I saw this, I'll just quickly blitz over it. But I mean, it's a skill you learn when you read questions. You're just like, oh, this is just junk. It's just telling me about the colors. So what I'll do is I'll give you 4 minutes. There's 2 minutes on this question and 2 minutes on the other question. And we'll see how you go, and we'll reconvene just to answer the last two questions. Okay, so I'll give you your 4 minutes starting at, the poll starting now. So in 1 more minute, I'll go on to the next question. You have 2 more minutes for this question. So please don't forget to put your answers in. Okay, we have 10 more seconds. I think we're waiting on one more respondent. So time is up, but to the last respondent, yep, fantastic. I'll end the poll now. Okay, so let's just go back to question 3. So look, I chucked you guys in the deep end. Reading ternary graphs, if you've never seen a ternary graph before, it's very hard to know how to read it. However, if you have seen it before, I think ASA does include a ternary graph in one of their practice exams. But if you have seen it before, it makes it so much easier if it does come up in the GAMSAT. Would anybody like to explain to me how they read a ternary graph? Yep, Jeremy, go for it.
Well,
1, 22, and
it's kind of
learning about another
two-dimensional, really. It's like, okay, you can go like a window wiper if you want, but I think it's easier to just go, you know, you do one thing at a time. So you go, okay, if I'm sitting at, you know,
How about we do it with gold? Let's do it with gold.
Let's just do it gold. We'll go, what is it, 40? Let's do 40%. Then what do we, well, we've got 2 lines going, and it depends whether we are, like say we do, then we set another variable, we set another like, well, we lock in, say, copper at 60. Then along that line, it depends on the silver. And so then it's, you know, then it's easy. So you lock into, you know, so firstly, you could just go, okay, here's 1 point, and I'm just going to spread, you know, from an angle, like depending on which. So if I'm going less copper, I'm going to go a lot more to anti-clockwise. You know, so a lot more towards the corner. But then how high I go above that corner depends on silver. So
also,
yeah, so you could just,
also sorry, Jeremy, I've because you don't have access to the graph to show everybody what you're saying. So I'll do my best to annotate what you're trying to say.
no, that's right. Okay, I'll say it again, more simpler.
Because I think what you're trying to say
at 40.
is, yep, if we start at 40, yep.
Yep, we'll start at 40. And now if we just consider one variable, which is copper,
Mm.
then we have with the triangle where the tip is up 40, and we can go, okay, how far along to the left or to the right depends on the copper.
Yeah.
So we got hardly any copper, which is for the question. I was like, okay, we're going to have very little copper to get to 150% hardness.
Mhm.
And so I'm going to shift most of my direction towards the left corner. However, we didn't know about the silver. So I'm like, okay, now if I go right near the corner of silver, at well, 75% gold, or it said, well, at least 40. So I did
Yep.
around 60, 75. We're on the top. We're going to be on that chunk. So it's like if you've eaten the corner of the pizza, you've just got that crust, basically. You've got that silver to gold bar there. And so I went right up that big column. So between 0 and 20% copper.
And
Mhm.
I just remember.
And then I went up from silver to gold
Mhm.
and counted the different sections. So
Yes. So
I
what
went,
was your
you know,
answer?
I chose 4.
Yeah, but like.
So for
Because
3, question 3.
Oh, sorry, for 3, I think I did white.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
So you've got it. It's just it's everybody has their own way. So Ramsha and Troy, do you have your own way, or would you like me to explain how I would do it as well? Do you guys have an how would you approach the ternary diagram?
I think you can go on with your explanation.
That's all right. Yeah, because so the thing is with these ternary diagrams, I think so. Jeremy's got it. It's just that he has his own way, and it's a bit difficult, obviously, for those attending to just understand what Jeremy's trying to say without the actual diagram there. But what we can say, let's just start off with gold. So if we start off with gold here, if you look at a ternary diagram, let's say gold 100% is at the top, and at the base, we've got 0%. Now, if you think about that for every other metal, it's the same principle. No, Jeremy, you're perfectly fine. Don't apologize for phrasing it simply or not. When you don't have the graph, the figure in front of you, it's very hard to try to phrase it in a way that you'd like. So don't worry about that. What you said was correct. And now that I've got the image in front of me, I can obviously add to what you've said. So we've got 0% here, 100% up here. So therefore, the base is 0%. The apex is 100%. Same thing for copper. So we can say this is 100%, but the base here is 0, which means if you look across, so let's say this is 20% gold, 40%, 60, 80% gold, 100% gold. With copper, your 0 starts over here. So that means if we're moving up, so with your copper, you can see the graph here says copper goes this way. Your copper, if you take a look, is going like this. So that's 20%, 40%, 60%, 80%. So, and then if you look at your silver, same deal, 100% is up here. And I'll show you why. You might be confused now, but when we go through actually explaining, you'll see what I mean. So silver here is 100, 0 is down here. So therefore, you know that silver is going up like this way, and these are going to be, say, 10%, 20, 40, 60, 80. So you just have to pick the apex as the 100%, the base is 0, and read it that way. So if I could turn my screen, so just try to turn your screen, you can see that if you make this the apex and say this as 0, you can see that it's going up from 0 to 100. Same thing with copper, make this the apex, that's 0, it's going up. So if we take a look at the question, it says a silver copper alloy with 300 hardness and at least 40% gold is unlikely to exhibit which color. So if we take a look at the figure here, So 300 hardness, at least 300, 300, let's just say that's 300, 300 and 300. So these regions here are associated with, so let's just say anywhere with at least, for argument's sake, about, let's say 10% copper. So for 40% gold, so we know it has to have at least 40% gold. AU. 10% copper, which means the rest has to be silver. So 50% silver. So the thing is, we know that the copper value can increase and silver value can decrease. However, the copper value has to be 10%. So copper has to be 10% because you can see here for 300 hardness, you have to have a minimum of 10% copper. So if we take a look at the ternary graph now, we see here that it has to have 40% gold. So we have to have 40% gold and a minimum of 10% copper. So if we look at the 40% gold, so it's going to be on this line here. So we know that straight away. Then it says 10% copper. So let's flip the apexes here. So 10% is going up. So 10% is about here. So let's say that's 10. So 10% is about there. And you can see, therefore, you have to have 50% silver. So you can see 50% silver is there. So if you look this way, oops. So you can see that's silver. If that's the apex, that's 50%. So our dot is going to be here. You can see here that it has to be a minimum green yellow color. And if we increase silver by if we increase copper and decrease silver, if we increase copper, we're shifting the curve that way. And if we decrease silver, we're shifting it down that way. So you're going to get an answer in somewhere in this region. But can you clearly see that you're not going to get an answer in the white region? The only way we're going to get white is if we have reduced copper. So the only way we're going to get white is if at 40% gold. So if we show this here, the only way we're going to get white in 40% gold is in this region. And that means we have to have at least, at most, somewhere around 4% copper, and about 59% silver. So in order to get a white alloy, you have to have gold at 40, so gold at 40, silver at 59, if that's 59, my maths isn't right. So that's probably going to be about 56. So 56, silver, and therefore copper has to be 4%. So if you have an alloy like this, you're going to end up with a white alloy. However, based on this graph for hardness, it can't be white. So it all comes down to, again, if it's hard to visualize, don't worry, there's a recording that's going to be available. Just try to think of it as this is the base. So that's the apex, that's the base, we're moving upwards. So we're moving upwards towards the apex, that's 100%, that's going to be 0%. So you try to shift and rotate the, I guess, the pyramid, if you will. So if we move on to the last question, if you do have any questions about this, please just post it in the Q&A. After we finish the last question, we might go through it again just to make sure you get it. Because look, ternary graphs are very hard to visualize. But hopefully, if you just think of it as locate the 100% axis and then the base axis, and you're just going to move up, you'll be fine. So same thing here with question 4. We had a few of you say 1 and 4. Just before I give my answer, I'd like to open the floor one last time. Can you guys explain to me why you've gone with, I think, Jeremy, you've given me your explanation before. How about Ramsha and Troy, why you think you've decided 1 or 4. Otherwise, I will just go through it because I understand that this question is one of those GAMSAT questions that comes up and some people will just be like, so we can hopefully now, once we go through it, if it does come up in the GAMSAT, you're just like, oh, we went through this with Hassan in the free webinar, so I should be able to do it. Okay, cool. So it looks like I'll just go through it just in interest of time. So let's just go through the motions here. It says a 14 karat gold. So we know straight away 14 karat, we're looking at the 60%. Prepared through heat treatment B, we're looking at this here. So the big black, sorry, the filled in black line is measured to possess 150 Newton meter hardness. So if we look at the graph, 150 is about, say here. So that's 150, but this is a trick. There's 150 here. There's also 150 here. So you could have a 14 karat gold crown with either, in this instance, it's about, let's say 8% copper or about 30% copper. So that means you can have a crown here with either, let's say, so 60% gold. So it has to be 60% gold. And the variation is going to be either 8% or 30% copper. And over here, it's going to be either 32% or 10% silver. So that's the variations you have for your dental crown. Because the trick here is the 150 hardness means you can have a different composition of silver and gold, or silver and copper. As you can see here in the curve, it curves. So that means if we take a look then, let's go 60% again. So it means it's going to be somewhere up here. If we have 8%, let's do 8% copper, 32% silver. So 8% copper is somewhere down here, 32% silver. So it's going to be about here. So that's our first one. And our next one is 30% copper, 10% silver. So 30% copper and 10% silver. And it's going to be about here. So you can see, if I just draw it quickly and show you, let me just get my eraser out. Pen. So you can see now that the color is either going to be for 60% gold, 8% copper, so that's about 8%. You can see it's about 8% with 32% silver. You can see 32% silver is about here. That's about 32%. And over here, it's about 32% copper with 10% silver. It's about halfway there. So you can see that we're going to have these two colors, green and yellow and red. So someone might say, is it going to be green and yellow and red, or is that 2 colors, or is that 3 colors? Because green, yellow, red. If we read over here our axes, our legend, it says here that the colors green, yellow, and red, yellow are single color profiles, which means we can assume green, yellow is one color, and red, so that's green, yellow, and that's red is another color. So we've got 2 colors. So the answer for 4 is B. So this is the sort of, for those who aren't familiar with GAMSAT, these are the sorts of things to look out for, the little tricks, because in every GAMSAT question, there's a trick. And when I designed these questions, again, I didn't design these questions to try to make myself seem so smart. You know, if I got presented something like this in the GAMSAT, something similar, I could get tricked. It can trick anybody. No one's a genius. No one's the smartest person on earth. The point is, under pressure, you have to be able to not fall for these tricks. We've got a comment here from Ramsha. I got tricked by the 30% on the curve. I only got green, yellow. So yeah, that's exactly why I put this here. So because I knew if I put this here, people would miss out on the second dot. But that's good, very honest of you, Ramsha. But hopefully now when you sit the GAMSAT, you'll make sure to look at the graph carefully. Another piece of advice when it comes to graphs, read the X and Y axes carefully, because over here, our X axis is copper and gold. So it's up and down, and our Y axis is hardness. So just look at the curves carefully. And when it comes to ternary graphs, the best way to prepare for it in the GAMSAT is to get exposed to it earlier. So what I'll do is, I'll erase everything. What I'll do is now is I'll open the floor to any questions you guys may have. Anything regarding, say, GAMSAT interviews, anything you'd like to ask, if you want answered, you can ask me now. Or if you'd like, you can email us at info@imemedical.com or go on our website. We have free material and you can post on our website through a contact sheet or contact form. We'll reply to you as soon as we can. But if you have any other questions, please let me know now and we can go through them just to, I guess, finish off the night. Okay, cool. So you all seem pretty content. Yeah, sure, Jeremy, can I ask you the mean GAMSAT score of getting an interview? Sure. Thanks, Ramsha, for the kind words as well. So it looks like this year, when it comes to GAMSAT scores for 2022, it's so competitive. Look, I've had students who received GAMSAT scores of 68 and have, or 68, 69, or I think it was 68, somewhere between upwards of 68 with GPAs above 6, not get offers. But I think that's because they would have applied for the universities, like, I think the universities that are notoriously difficult to get into with your GAMSAT and GPA score. However, based on experience for 2022, I would strongly suggest that you aim for a GAMSAT score above 65 and a GPA above 6 to be competitive. So it's a lot more competitive these days than it was in the past. So please, if you're looking for a score to be competitive, that's assuming you don't have bonus points. Because, for example, schools like Deakin take in bonus points for rurality, if you've been registered with APRA, or if you're working full-time, or if you've got disability. I think University of Melbourne does as well for disability. A lot of schools like Griffith, I think UQ, I can't remember, Macquarie. If you do a postgraduate, if you do a PhD or Masters by Research, they give you a 100% GPA score. So it's like 7 out of 7 or whatever it is. That's for 2022. Just keep in mind, it's going to change next year for when you apply 2023 for 2024 entry. But just for this year alone, if you want, you can go on our website. If you can go on our website, we do give you on our insights and blogs, you can read up on the different things you need to know for GAMSAT, for medicine entry. We have a comment here from Ramsha, aim for 70 plus because current data for interview offers says so. Look, a lot of people say you have to get 70 plus, but so the info we're getting these days isn't published by ASA. So a lot of the time when I say 65 plus, I'm going off what students are telling me their scores are. You might go on other organizations who say this is the average score that got into medicine, but you have to understand it's heavily skewed in favor of those who actually put their data into it. I think you have to put your data into like an Excel spreadsheet. It's a public forum. People can lie about their scores. People can, and generally speaking, those who got into medicine would most likely, or got an offer would most likely put their scores. So a lot of students who didn't get the cutoff won't put their scores. So I would take those with a grain of salt. However, if you're getting a score above 70 for GAMSAT and you have a GPA above 6, you should be guaranteed an interview. But again, I'm not going to say that because these days it's so competitive. But from the past, you need a score above 65. And I'm saying that because I've had students with 64 get interview offers but it depends if you're applying for a school that requires, what do they call it? Portfolio. So it's a bit lower. So portfolio takes a big chunk of your interview offer and medical school offer. So keep in mind, if you want to be competitive these days, 65 to maybe get an interview, 70, you're guaranteed an interview. That's 2022 entry. For those who haven't sat the GAMSAT before, I very rarely have met somebody who's got into medicine doing the GAMSAT only once. A lot of people, I've looked at studies and a lot of organizations, I think at different universities, especially here in Queensland, with their student societies, they've done polls and they found that a lot of the students had to sit the GAMSAT probably an average of 4 or 5 times. So a lot of people sit the GAMSAT about, I'd say about 4, 5, 6 times. So don't feel as though if your first GAMSAT score was poor, you suck. A lot of people are sitting the GAMSAT multiple times, and you're competing against people who've sat the GAMSAT a lot of times. So keep that in mind. But anyway, I don't want to scare you away. Just note that if you want to, the GAMSAT is a massive hurdle. A lot of people say when they get into medicine, life is so much better because the GAMSAT is out of the way, they don't have to do it anymore. It's a massive hurdle. If you need any help, contact us. We can definitely help you. We can assist you with our courses, programs, and we can give you a lot if you need that extra push. Otherwise, you can just drop a comment, let us know, and just enjoy the ride of GAMSAT. It's a tough battle, but you're going to be learning a lot of new things, and hopefully you can attend these sessions in the future, and we can go through a few more pesky questions, but we'll be doing it together. Thanks for your time, guys. Have a fantastic day and evening now, and we'll talk soon. I'll send the link to your email when it's up in the next couple of days. There is a public holiday, so I think Queen's or King's birthday and Labor Day for a couple of states on Monday, but it'll be up hopefully next week. Take care, guys. Have a fantastic weekend. See ya.